and your flame will still work. Before you put this down, let the cooktop cool. Before you put the lid here down, definitely let the cooktop cool, or you'll run the risk of it shattering. Next up, this is the exhaust, or not exhaust, but this is where the heat comes in if you're running the heat. I skipped over it a little bit, but this is the thermostat back here. If you need to run the heat, it does run off of propane only, and it lasts forever. We once slept in it when it was 10 degrees, ran it all night, and didn't use but a quarter of the tank, I think, something like that. So it's and it stays very, very warm. But standard thermostat, you just push this to wherever you want. We always keep it roughly a little less than half to keep it comfortable in here on cold nights. But this is where the heat flows in. All right, sink. Another thing that you want to have the hot water pump on when you're running it, unless you're hooked up to city water. So if you're like us, we don't go to too many places that have city water hookups, and because of that, we run the water pump to run for any water to flow through this sink or the shower or the toilet. More lights up here. One touch little lights here. Every one of them is individually controlled. Another electrical outlet. This one's a GFI. If it had a TV, this is, I think, where you'd plug it in and pull the cable in from. We don't have a TV in this unit. All right, so your radio. I've got, the control panel's really easy to use. I do have instructions inside that door just in case you run into any issues, but it does work on Bluetooth, so you can hook up Spotify or whatever you want, or you can grab local stations wherever you're camping. It does have zone 1 and zone 2. Zone 1's inside, zone 2 is outside. It does default to zone 2, meaning it's gonna blast your neighbors, so keep that in mind. So controls over here, this is the main stuff. You've got the awning in and out. I'll show that to you once we go outside. And you have your lights. This is your main light control. It does most of the lights in the main living space, but you can see some of the ones that didn't turn off when I did that. Those ones are only manual control at the light bulb. So I'll flick it back on and you can see which one's turned on there. The other switch is for the outdoor light. There's an outdoor LED light underneath the awning. So if you turn that on, it'll turn on outside. And again, this is the slide for the dinette. I'll show you how that operates soon. So up here is your main control panel for seeing where you're at on battery, fresh water, meaning the stuff you put into the fresh water tank, if you're not hooked up at a city water site, black water tanks where what comes out of the toilet, gray water tank, what comes where the water that flows through the sink and the shower flow through. If you want to check their levels, you can see the battery level is at full. That'll go up and down. The unit does charge while you're driving, so if you're using it a little bit before you take off and you're worried about it being at 2/3 or something, don't worry. Once you get driving, it'll go back up. Also, the solar works fantastic, like I mentioned. We can pretty much go unlimited as long as we've got good sunlight. The freshwater tank, I mentioned this a little bit, it's on E right now because we don't have any water in it. But if you're not hooked up to city water, which we don't often do, you can fill up the outside on the outside of the camper, you can fill up the freshwater tank, and that gives you all the water that's going to flow through the sink, the toilet, and the shower. As I mentioned, the black water tank, also empty right now. That's any water that you use in the toilet, it goes into the black water tank. Any water you use in the sink or the shower goes into the gray water tank. Here's the water pump that I mentioned a couple times. You might hear it in the background, but it clicks on. You only want to use this when you're running water. Turn it off when you're not running water. So anytime you use any of the sink, the shower, or the toilet like I mentioned. The water heater, it can run off gas or electric. You'll notice that it heats up a lot quicker on gas than it does electric. It takes a little bit more time. My kind of rule of thumb is I turn on the gas one about 10 or 15 minutes before I take a shower, and maybe 20 or 30 minutes if I want to use electric before I take a shower. Hot water does come out of the shower and the kitchen sink. You don't use both of them at the same time, just use one or the other. So you flip that on. You'll notice this is a feature, I'm not quite sure why this does this. This is almost a brand new camper. it will show fault for a second when you first turn it on. I think what it's doing is it's waiting to receive gas from the propane tank, but then eventually that will turn off. Like you saw, funny, it just turned off exactly when I said, and right now it's heating up the water. Electric, same way. You turn the electric on and wait a little bit of time, and it goes on. All right, last kind of few things here are other storage areas. Underneath here, you'll see that we have everything in here. Our goal here is to have the Baja be set up to where you don't really have to bring anything. On the flip side, we can take all this stuff out though if you want to bring your own stuff. In this compartment back underneath the fridge, it has your main like pots, pans, and utensils for cooking over a fire, a hot water kettle, coffee filters. We have a pour over system for coffee in here if you want to use that system, or bring your own if you want to use something different. But everything you'd need is in these 2 buckets here. It doesn't go too deep in there. It is in these 2 buckets. Pots, pans, pretty much everything you need. On the flip side, on this front cabinet, there's another trash can, extra trash bags down low. This little thing compartment has scrubbers for scrubbing dishes and towels for drying dishes. A little broom here for sweeping up things, some extra soap. These 2 buckets, these are what we use for outdoor dishes. We typically do our dishes outdoors. You can do them indoors if you want. And there's a drying rack here. But if you'd like to do it outdoors like we normally do, there's 1 tub for a wash basin, 1 tub for a rinse basin, another tub, and then the drying rack. Behind the trash can here, this is where all the main utensils are. So cutting boards, splatter trays. If you're cooking bacon and you want to do it inside, you can use the splatter tray so it doesn't get too much on the walls. Cups, silverware, measuring cups, cutting knives. There's a wine glass in here. There's coffee mugs. Basically everything you possibly need. A good set of stuff that you can pretty much come with just your clothes and you'll be good to go. Keep in mind, we can take these things out if you prefer to use your own. All right, so and then last up top is another compartment. I think of this compartment as my junk drawer. I always drop my keys, my wallet, things like that in here. I also have some extra paper towels, cleaner. If you do have a dog and you don't want to get charged the excessive fee for me having to clean up the hair, there's a lint roller in here as well. Hopefully, ideally you'd you use that to get all the dog hair out. I've had to get dog hair off this mattress in the past, and it can be pretty hard. So take care of that with the lint roller. Also, the instruction manual back here is right in the back. We also use these little door clips. They are great little hooks that go over the door back here. There's roughly 6 of them in there, and you can hang headlamps, jackets, towels, whatever you need, hats, things like that. Really good setup. I always keep them in here though for traveling, because anything that you leave out can scratch the camper pretty well when you're traveling. It's a good comment to make. For when you're traveling, these beds hold 200 pounds apiece. Sleeping on them, they hold 300 pounds, but while you're traveling, they only want you to put up to 200 pounds on them. I would always recommend to put your bags and stuff towards the front though. It helps prevent trailer sway. When you're pulling in the dinette using the slide room, make sure you don't have anything on it. You can leave the stuff that's inside the compartments that we spoke about, but don't have anything on top of it. You don't want to have a lot of weight there. Other travel like maybe tidbits to think about is anything that's in here is probably going to be slightly move around. Like for example, I leave a cooler in here when I travel, and you'll see when you get to your next stop it's moved a little bit. So I always take like towels and put them between the cooler and the walls, so that way the cooler doesn't end up resting against the walls and rubbing up against any of the cabinets or things like that. Bags are great to just store right on top of the bed. They won't go anywhere. If you put them on the mattress, they really won't go anywhere. The goal is you're going to be driving a speed limit or less with this thing. They're not really meant to go for high speeds, so I never go over 65 in the camper, pulling the camper, and that's even on a 75-mile-an-hour road, because these things really aren't meant for going higher speeds than that. Depending on the truck you're using or the vehicle you're using, though, I have a smaller vehicle, so 65 is my max. Some people might feel a little bit more comfortable going faster than that with a heavier duty vehicle, though. So yeah, I will leave that there, and there'll be some more videos about the outside and anything else I forgot. Thanks again.